Alright, what's going on, guys? My name is Omega. Welcome back to another Apex Legends video. So today we are going to be ranking every single legend in Apex from worst to best. Hopefully this list will kind of help you guys to understand who's really good in this meta right now, who's not so good, and who you should probably focus on learning if you don't know all of the legends in Apex right now. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. We're going to start off with the worst of the legends right now, with, in my opinion, the worst legend out of them all, and I don't really think that this guy is bad by any means, but I think compared to the rest of the legends, he definitely has, some things that is missing from his kit, some things that could make him a little bit better, and that is Octane. So as you guys know, Octane literally just got a buff yesterday for the new patch that came out to Apex Legends, and it was a pretty good buff. It actually gave him an increased movement speed when he used his active ability, as well as allowed him and his teammates to now double jump after using his launch pad ultimate. This is really good. I mean, I thought it made Octane a lot more fun to use, but if you're kind of looking at the big picture of Apex Legends, it still doesn't really give him anything that benefits his team. Octane has always and probably will always be a very selfish legend, so you can be good with Octane if you're good at the game and you can flank people and take people out on your own, but in my opinion, if you're at the lower levels of Apex Legends, in silver and gold possibly, I feel like Octane isn't going to do as well for your team as some of these other legends in this list. So personally, I think Octane still has got a little bit of ways to go before he is in kind of like the meta of Apex. Right now, he's just a fun character to play. I don't get mad if people pick him, but I don't think he's as good as some of these other people. But moving on to the next legend, we have Krypto. Now, Krypto is someone who I've kind of always been annoyed with in Apex Legends. I think Kryptos, once you're playing at a level of like Platinum and Diamond, they get really good, and it's very effective to have a Krypto on your team. But if you're just starting out in Apex, and you're just playing normal lobbies, or you're playing in, Silver or Bronze, Krypto is just not as useful because he has a very high skill cap to use. The problem with Krypto is that when you're in your drone, if you don't know exactly what you're doing, then you're basically automatically down a teammate. At that point, it's a 2v3 if you're going against another full squad, so it's very hard to justify why people, sit in Krypto's drone. I mean, his ultimate is very useful at destroying Watson traps, Watson ultimates, as well as just other traps in the area, so Krypto does have that benefit of using his ultimate for his teammates, but at the same time, I do think Krypto is a difficult legend to master, so playing Krypto at a lower rank might not be the best idea, just because there are so many other legends out there that would do a much better job at those levels. Moving on to the next one, we have Bangalore. Now, Bangalore in all of my ranking lists has kind of been at the bottom of most of them. I think Bangalore is a very good legend to use. I think she's just a very well-rounded legend in general. A lot of her abilities make sense. She's very useful at what she does. I think the reason why I'm ranking her lower on this list is just because I don't feel like her ultimate is that powerful compared to a lot of other legend ultimates. Her ultimate seems very random, and while her other abilities work well, like her smoke and her passive, her ability to run faster, it just seems like her ultimate is a little bit flawed and definitely not as good as some of the other legends. I still like Bangalore. I think she could have, a lot of potential if she got some buffs in the future, but she just hasn't been touched in a while, so that's why she's ranked lower in this list. After Bangalore, we have someone who surprisingly has moved up in the ranks since my last ranking video, and that is Mirage. So Mirage right now in Apex Legends I think is very good. He just went through a ton of recent changes in Season 5. Obviously now his ultimate is much better, where his decoys will actually go in random directions and mimic exactly what he does. You can also now control your decoys when you throw them out, which is very helpful for bamboozling people. Definitely confuses me a lot, and the best thing about Mirage right now in my opinion is his passive. Being able to actually revive people while being invisible is a huge change that I really wasn't expecting them to add to Mirage, but I think that one change makes him a much more viable legend right now. Mirage can very easily kind of act as a second lifeline in which he can revive his teammates and not be seen by the enemy. Unless they see him go to revive them, you can pretty much guarantee getting that revive off no problem. So I think Mirage is in a very good spot right now. He's probably not as good as some of these other legends who have had much, bigger buffs, but at the same time, he's a great pick nonetheless. So, if you're playing Mirage or you want to play Mirage, he's definitely in a good place right now. Moving on to the next legend is Bloodhound, and I think Bloodhound is actually in a very good spot right now. Bloodhound has had a lot of different changes in the past, most of those being adding buffs to their abilities, specifically Bloodhound's ultimate that got a huge buff recently. Now when you're in their ultimate, you can actually extend Bloodhound's ultimate by getting downs, so it's a really good way to actually have that movement speed boost and to be able to basically just see everyone. Like, Bloodhound's range is so far right now, and I think they're a really good legend to play. If you guys are looking for someone new to play, Bloodhound I think is definitely the way to go. Not a lot of people play them, but they are definitely an amazing legend to start with. Moving on, we have Loba. Now, Loba obviously was the newest legend to be released in Season 5. I think Loba has a lot of potential in this game. One thing that I would kind of comment on is that I think her ultimate should be buffed a little bit. Like, her ultimate is, in my opinion, what's kind of holding her back. Only be able to pick out 2 items in a pool of items is not as good. Like, in a lot of situations where you're at the end of the game and Loba places down her ultimate, you are usually looking for shield batteries, shield cells, med kits, or ammo. So you kind of have to make a choice at that point of what is more important to you during that time. So I think that kind of balances out Loba in a way, but at the same time, you know, her abilities just don't really make her an A+ legend. She's very good at what she does, and I think she fits really nicely into the meta, but she's kind of in that like B to C tier if we're doing this on kind of like a school grading scale. She's not an A tier yet. I think she can get there with a little bit more buffs, or if any of these other A tier legends get nerfed a little bit, but right now Loba is in a very good spot. She's just not in like the worst or best spot, kind of in the middle. Moving on from Loba, we have Wraith. Now, Wraith also got a huge change in yesterday's patch. One of the biggest things that was changed about her was her active ability, where now when you use her active ability, you actually have like a 1.25 second delay before she actually goes into the void. So many people thought this change was kind of a huge nerf to Wraith, and the way that the developers were talking about this on Twitter was they didn't want Wraith to have an ability that gave her a get out jail free card. You know, that's kind of what her active was, where she could immediately pop it and just get out of any situation whatsoever. They said they want Wraith to now kind of be like a scouter legend, so using her active ability before getting into a fight will give her that movement speed boost, allow her to get to that fight sooner, and then she can use her portal or her ultimate to bring her teammates to the fight or to escape back to her teammates. So I think while Wraith had a decent amount of changes in this last patch, I don't think they made her any better or worse. I think she's still in a really good spot, and while you have to play her a little bit differently now, it doesn't mean that she's any worse of a legend. So I think Wraith is still in a pretty good spot. Give her a chance. I feel like if people relearn her abilities and how she's played now in the game, they're gonna see that Wraith is still in a pretty good spot, and she's definitely not as bad as some people are saying right now. After Wraith, we have my favorite legend, which is Revenant. Now, Revenant had another massive buff in this last patch yesterday. One of the biggest things that was changed about Revenant is now when he uses his ultimate, you are not restricted by any amount of range. So Revenant's ultimate is in a very good spot right now. Almost every game that I play in Apex, I see a Revenant on someone else's team. So there's been a lot of zombie fights later on into the game after Revenant uses his ultimate, just due to the fact that you can place it anywhere on the map and you're not restricted by how far you can go. You do still have to kind of take into consideration how long the ultimate is going to last. The last thing that you want to do is to have your ultimate run out in the middle of a fight, or to place your ultimate in an area where someone could easily just shoot it and, you know, put you back to your regular form. Revenant is in a really good spot right now. I think he might even be a little too overpowered. We're just going to have to wait and see on how people are actually playing him in the future. But yeah, Revenant is my main. I think he's a great legend. If you guys don't play him already, definitely give him a chance. So this next set of legends are probably in like the A tier, I would say. These are very meta legends. All of them have abilities that make complete sense and are really useful for the rest of the team. Starting off with the first legend in this tier is going to be Lifeline. Now, Lifeline, again, got a huge patch or buff yesterday where she can now revive 2 people at once, one using her dock drone and the other is her just reviving the teammate herself. The one bad thing about this whole change is that Lifeline's fast heals was actually removed from her kit. So if you guys remember before, Lifeline had the ability to actually heal faster. She had about a 1 second advantage when it came to healing, which was super good good for people who like to play really offensive. And the way Apex, I guess, sees Lifeline right now is more of a defensive medic. I think this change to remove her fast heals and to allow her to revive 2 people at once is definitely obviously pulling her away from that offensive side and putting her into a more defensive position. So I still think she's a very good legend right now, but I do understand why a lot of Lifeline mains are pretty upset by the fact that, you know, she's no longer that super offensive healer that she used to be. We're just gonna have to wait and see on how Lifeline players react in the future. I still think Lifeline is in a very good spot, but you do have to take into consideration she no longer has fast heals, so you got to play a little bit more defensive. But moving on to the next one, we have Pathfinder. Now Pathfinder is someone who has kind of always been in the A tier. I don't think he's as good as he was a couple months ago, just because we recently had a nerf to Pathfinder's active ability, where his cooldown is now 35 seconds to actually grapple. It was a huge decrease in the amount of times that you could use his grapple, but I think most of us could admit that it was a pretty overpowered ability, just being able to get in and out of any situation basically whenever you want. Pathfinder kind of had the same problem that Wraith had, you know, in terms of the developer's eyes, that she kind of just had a get out of jail free card that you could use whenever you wanted in any kind of situation. So having that nerf to Pathfinder's active ability definitely kind of set him back a little bit, but Pathfinder is the only legend that can do what he does. He can get to any position on the map very quickly with his ultimate, and he's really helpful to teammates. So that's why I still think he's an A tier legend. He's definitely part of the meta still, but we're just gonna have to wait and see if he gets any further nerfs that'll drag him farther down this list. Moving on, we have the 2 trap legends, Watson and Caustic. I'm ranking these both together because I think they're both really good at what they do. They just do things a little bit differently. Watson recently had a change where she can now only have 3 of her ultimates down at once, and she can now also stack ultimate accelerants in her inventory. So what they basically did with Watson was they wanted to create little openings where Watson's traps just wouldn't work anymore. You know, before Watson could have all of her traps out, all of her ultimates out, and unless you actually destroyed her ultimate, there's really no way of breaching any area that a Watson was in. So while this was technically a nerf, I still do think that Watson is in a very good position, because any good Watson player will be able to time their abilities and time how long their ultimates will actually be active, and I think it's still going to make her a really good legend. You know, this is a small setback, which is why I placed her before Caustic, but I still think Watson is in a very good position regardless of the nerfs that she recently received. Caustic, on the other hand, is also very good for what he does, just placing traps and controlling areas, and also he is a counter against other Caustic players. And right now in the meta, at least in what I'm experiencing in kind of like my gold to platinum games, is that there are a lot of Caustics out there, and the only way to counter Caustic is if you're Caustic, because then you can walk through his traps and just be perfectly fine. So I think having a Caustic on your team is really effective, just to be able to take out those other Caustics. It's kind of like a little 1v1 that they get into, and whoever comes out on top is usually going to be the team that actually wins. So I think Caustic is again in a very good spot right now. He didn't really have a huge amount of changes recently. There was one change that allowed people to actually destroy his traps before they were fully inflated, which I thought was kind of a good change, because Caustic really was, you know, a very overpowered legend, especially if you were trying to breach an area with Caustic traps. So being able to play against a Caustic offensively while still being able to take out his traps when they're first deployed was a pretty good change in my opinion. But then finally, the best legend in Apex Legends, which to no one's surprise is still Gibraltar. Gibraltar got a small nerf on yesterday's patch. I think he could have had a little bit more of a nerf, you know, because Gibraltar has just been a top tier legend for the past 3, 4, 5 months now. It's been insane how long Gibraltar has been like an A+ tier legend. In the patch yesterday, his fast heals was reduced from 25% fast heals to 15% when in his dome shield. It wasn't a huge change, but I think it's definitely going to be noticeable for Gibraltar players or anyone who has a Gibraltar on their team. Personally, I think Gibraltar's shield could have a little bit of a nerf, just because I've talked about a lot how really the only counter to Gibraltar right now is Revenant. Revenant's silence is the only thing that can cancel Gibraltar's shield, which basically puts him back to, you know, a regular legend legend's health. Gibraltar right now has like 250 health technically when he's got full shields, and if you add in the damage reduction that he takes just from being a fat ass, then he has a huge amount of health, and it's very hard to 1v1 a Gibraltar right now. So personally, I think a little bit more changes could be coming to Gibraltar. I understand they're trying to do this slowly and not just nerf him to the ground accidentally, because it does take a while to revert these patches if something does go wrong. But I thought this list was pretty accurate. I want to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments below, because obviously we're all playing in different ranks. We all have different experiences with these legends. So just because this is my opinion, understandably, it's not like set in stone. This is going to be the best list out there. Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure you drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will see you guys on my next video. Have a great day. Peace out.